sort of a thing. So there is that. We're starting to get bank earnings, which so far have been very good. Investment banking really kind of coming through like people thought, but we still have a shutdown, and it looks like it's going to continue, and that's going to start raising questions not only about the IPO market, but about consumer spending as those furloughs are extended, and if we get more massive layoffs, that could be a problem too.
So let's be honest, the phrase generational wealth gets thrown around a lot in the crypto space. People post screenshots of charts and say, this coin will make you rich. But if we're being real, wealth that disappears after one cycle isn't generational. Generational wealth means something deeper. It means building an asset base that outlives you, something that keeps creating opportunity long after the hype fades and the markets move on. And right now, in the middle of all the noise and confusion, there's a quiet truth forming. A truth sitting in plain sight for those patient enough to see it. Because when you look past the daily price swings, you start noticing a pattern. The same few names keep coming up whenever the world talks about the future of money. XRP, XLM, HBAR. And this isn't by accident. Each one represents a different pillar of the next global financial system: banking infrastructure, financial inclusion, and digital trust. Together, they form what could become one of the biggest shifts in wealth creation of our generation. But before we dive into how, let's get something clear. This isn't a get-rich-quick conversation. This is about positioning yourself where the next system is being built. Because every few decades, there's a moment when the world rewrites the rules of value, and those who understand it early don't just make money. They make history. The wealth formula nobody talks about. Here's what most people get wrong about building wealth. They think it's about catching the next big trend. But real wealth, the kind that creates legacies, comes from owning the rails before the world realizes it's running on them. Look back through time. The people who built wealth in the 1800s didn't just trade, they built the railroads. In the 1900s, the wealthiest weren't just using oil, they owned the pipelines. In the 2000s, the wealthiest didn't just buy online, they owned the internet infrastructure. And now, in this decade, the new rails are digital value networks, systems that move money, data, and identity across the globe without friction. That's where XRP, XLM, and HBAR come in. They're not meme coins. They're not hype tokens. They're the infrastructure layer of the next global economy. The ones quietly building the systems that banks, governments, and institutions are already starting to depend on. When you look at them not as coins, but as digital toll roads for the future of value, everything changes. Because the truth is, every transaction that flows through these networks creates activity, liquidity, and utility. And over time, that utility is what compounds. The same way owning land in a growing city eventually becomes priceless. The calm builders in a loud market. Let's be real. The crypto space can be loud, chaotic, and emotional. One week, it's Bitcoin dominance. Next week, it's some new meme coin or AI token. But in the background, while everyone is chasing hype, XRP, XLM, and HBAR have been building quietly. XRP has been integrating with central banks, payment providers, and institutional networks, the plumbing of global finance. XLM has been working with MoneyGram, Circle, and the UN, bridging everyday people into the digital economy. HBAR has been partnering with corporations like IBM, Google, and Standard Bank, laying the foundation for enterprise-grade digital trust. Each of these projects is building something that lasts not for the next bull run, but for the next generation of financial infrastructure. And here's where the mindset shift comes in. When you start thinking like an investor instead of a trader, you stop asking when moon, and start asking what foundation is being laid beneath my feet, because this isn't just about price action, it's about ownership during transformation. The great repricing of value. We're standing at the edge of what might be the biggest revaluation of assets since the birth of the internet. Why? Because the way we define value itself is changing. Right now, every major institution, IMF, BIS, World Bank, G20, BRICS, is talking about interoperability, tokenized assets, and cross-border settlement. All those big, complicated words really mean one thing. The world is digitizing trust. And when that happens, the networks that move that trust, that validate and secure it, become the new power structures. That's where XRP, XLM, and HBAR sit. They're not just part of the system, they are the system being built. When the old financial order gives way to the new one, it won't happen overnight. It'll happen quietly through updates, partnerships, and new standards that suddenly make the old ways obsolete. And when that happens, these three networks could become the backbone of how money, identity, and value move across the planet. That's how generational wealth is built. Not from hype, but from owning the right foundation before the world catches on. Seeing beyond the noise. Every generation has a moment when the rules of wealth creation shift. For our parents, it was real estate and industrial capital. For millennials, it was the internet and tech stocks. For us, it's digital value networks. And yet, most people will miss it because they're waiting for the moment it feels obvious. But by the time it's obvious, it's already too late. The smart money, the institutions, the banks, the funds, they're already positioning around the same assets that retail investors once ignored. The question now isn't if these networks will define the next era. It's who will still be early enough to benefit from it. And maybe that's the quiet beauty of this moment. While everyone's chasing hype, you have the chance to study what actually matters, to invest not in noise, but in the new foundation of global value. That's how generational wealth is built. Not through luck, not through hype, through patience, conviction, and understanding what the world is quietly moving toward. Everyone says they want generational wealth, but few actually know what that means in the context of crypto. It's not just about catching the next pump or flipping tokens for a quick 3x. It's about positioning yourself where the world's money is moving before the crowd realizes it's even happening. That's where XLM, XRP, and HBAR quietly stand apart from 99% of the crypto market. These aren't meme coins hoping for hype, they're infrastructure. They're what the next phase of global finance runs on. So let's break down what the actual blueprint for generational wealth looks like in this context. Every wealth cycle follows the same rhythm. First comes accumulation, then distribution, and finally transformation. The people who create wealth aren't those who jump in when it's loud. They're the ones who accumulate when it's quiet, when everyone else is distracted or afraid. That's exactly where we are right now. The accumulation phase for XLM, XRP, and HBAR isn't glamorous. It's not the trending topic on X or the flashy headline on CNBC. But history tells us this is where fortunes are built. The biggest moves in Bitcoin's history happened after periods of deep boredom and disbelief. The same pattern is quietly repeating itself with utility-driven coins, the ones tied to actual systems of payment, settlement, and data exchange. Let's take XRP for instance. It's deeply integrated into institutional payment rails, banks, remittance networks, and liquidity corridors. Every test pilot, every cross-border transaction Ripple facilitates is like a quiet heartbeat in the global financial system. The public doesn't notice, but those who study macro trends do. Now, pair that with XLM, Stellar, which is building out the retail and humanitarian side, partnerships with MoneyGram, UN agencies, and central bank digital currency, CBDC, tests. It's not hype. It's infrastructure designed to bridge the unbanked world with the digital economy. Then you have HBAR Hedera, the enterprise-grade digital backbone. This partnership's read like a Fortune 500 roll call. Google, IBM, Boeing, Standard Bank. This isn't a speculative play. It's the digital ledger that companies are quietly embedding into their business operations. Together, these three coins represent the trinity of real-world adoption: retail, institutional, and enterprise. And that's exactly why holding them through uncertainty is how you position for generational wealth. When this financial shift goes fully digital, when CBDCs, tokenized assets, and instant settlements become the global norm, these networks are already waiting at the finish line. Here's a truth that hurts. Most people overestimate what they can make in 12 months, but underestimate what they can build in 5 to 10 years. That's the time horizon of generational wealth. You don't get it by perfectly timing every pump or dump. You get it by owning high-utility assets through multiple cycles and letting the system mature around them. Think of XRP when regulatory pressure was at its highest. While others panicked, quiet investors kept accumulating. Now, as the US legal clarity slowly unfolds, those who stayed consistent are sitting on what could be one of the most undervalued assets in digital finance. The same applies to XLM and HBAR. They don't need hype to grow. They need time for adoption to compound. The real trick isn't to guess what will moon next. It's to identify what the system can't live without, and then never sell it cheap. Generational wealth doesn't come from one big buy. It's built on consistent, quiet accumulation. Dollar cost averaging, DCA, into utility coins like XLM, XRP, and HBAR allows you to neutralize volatility and benefit from long-term network growth. Every dip becomes a discount on your future. Let's put it in perspective. Imagine someone bought XRP in 2018 at 40 cents, watched it fall to 15 cents, then rise past $1. Those early holders weren't lucky. They were disciplined. They understood that, in innovation cycles, patience compounds faster than price. So when you buy a bit of XLM or HBAR every week or month, even when the charts look boring, you're doing what the smart money does. You're playing the long game. And that long game is what turns short-term volatility into long-term value. Creating generational wealth isn't just about money. It's about mindset. You're not trading tokens. You're building a foundation that could outlive your lifetime. That's what makes this phase so important. You're not gambling on hype. You're investing in the digital plumbing of the future. Each XLM in your wallet represents participation in a decentralized global payment layer. Each XRP is a piece of a frictionless settlement network. Each HBAR is a stake in enterprise-grade decentralization. So the mindset isn't, how fast can I make money? It's, how do I own a slice of the next internet of value? Generational wealth is built by those who see the system before it becomes obvious, who stay calm when others are emotional, and who understand that real returns come from conviction, not convenience. The final stage is where wealth becomes legacy, when what you hold isn't just value, but influence. Once the world fully shifts toward tokenized assets, instant settlements, and digital IDs, those who've held on to the core networks, the XLMs, XRPs, and BARs, become more than investors. They become early adopters of a new economy. They'll have the liquidity, the digital leverage, and the network access to participate in opportunities the masses won't even see yet. Staking rewards, governance roles, interoperability projects, private market access. Generational wealth isn't a finish line. It's an ecosystem you grow into. And that's what holding these assets through fear, boredom, and disbelief truly unlocks. The world is building a new monetary system, quietly, digitally, and inevitably. The next decade won't reward those who chase noise. It'll reward those who understood the signal. And if history rhymes, the signal right now spells 3 letters: XLM, XRP, and HBAR. Because while everyone's waiting for the next bull run, the builders of generational wealth are already positioning themselves to own the rails that money itself will travel on. When people talk about generational wealth, they usually imagine property, gold, or businesses. But what most haven't realized yet is this: the next generation's real wealth will be built on digital rails. Not the rails of fiat banking, not the rails of Wall Street, but the rails of tokenized value, where assets move in seconds, not days, and where financial systems no longer rely on middlemen to approve your money. That's where XLM, XRP, and HBAR come in. These networks aren't just coins, they're financial infrastructure. They're the quiet machinery behind the future of global settlements, payments, and ownership. And those who understand that now, before it becomes mainstream, are setting up their families for a level of opportunity that will feel unreal to those who arrive late. Think about it like this: in every major wealth transition in history, the people who controlled the rails, the systems of exchange, were the ones who built empires. In the age of gold, it was miners and bankers. In the industrial age, it was oil and steel magnates. In the digital age, it was data and the internet. Now, in the monetary internet age, it's the value networks, and that's what XLM, XRP, and HBAR represent. Owning even small amounts of these coins now is like owning equity in the digital version of the banking system before it becomes mainstream. XRP gives access to high-speed institutional liquidity. XLM enables low-cost global transfers for real people and humanitarian use. HBAR powers secure, enterprise-grade transactions and tokenization. Each of these networks plays a role in reshaping what it means to move and own money. And that's where long-term value comes from, not just speculation but actual use. Here's the mindset shift that separates traders from wealth builders. Traders hold coins. Builders hold infrastructure. When you own XLM, XRP, and HBAR, you're not just holding speculative assets, you're owning a piece of the architecture that global finance will use to function. Imagine a world where everything, from real estate to carbon credits, from salaries to government aid, is tokenized. In that world, every transaction needs a network to settle on. That's not a dream, that's exactly what central banks, corporations, and even the IMF are actively developing right now. XLM facilitates retail CBDCs and humanitarian payments. XRP enables bank-grade settlements between financial institutions. HBAR supports tokenization and smart contracts for corporations and governments. You're not betting on hype. You're investing in the operating systems of future money. Let's talk about utility, the most underrated wealth multiplier in crypto. Speculation fades. Memes fade. But utility compounds. Every time a payment is made on the XRP ledger, every time a remittance flows through Stellar, every time an enterprise runs data on Hedera, that's adoption compounding quietly in the background. So when you hold XLM, XRP, or HBAR through slow months, through doubt, through fear, you're not just holding coins. You're holding conviction. You're proving that you understand what's coming before it becomes obvious. That's how generational wealth is built, not in hype cycles, but in belief cycles. If you hold XLM, XRP, and HBAR, you're not late. You're early, unbelievably early. We're living through the greatest wealth transition since the invention of the internet. And the crazy part? Most people won't realize it until it's over. Those who are quietly accumulating XLM, XRP, and HBAR now aren't just investing in coins. They're positioning themselves to own the rails of value itself. That's what generational wealth looks like, not flashy, not loud, but foundational. Let's slow this down for a second. Because if you've made it this far, you already understand something that most people don't. The real wealth isn't being built on hype, it's being built right now in silence. That's the funny thing about history. It never announces when the next chapter begins. It just happens quietly in moments that seem small at the time. That's exactly what's happening with XLM, XRP, and HBAR right now. Every major financial institution, from the IMF to the World Bank, from SWIFT to Visa, is either researching or already integrating blockchain technology for global settlements. They know it. The media just doesn't talk about it yet. Cross-border payments are broken. They're slow, expensive, and outdated. But the solution isn't coming from another app or some fintech startup. It's coming from infrastructure, from the rails that money itself travels on. And that's where XLM, XRP, and HBAR quietly lead the way. XRP, solving the liquidity problem for banks and institutions through on-demand settlement. XLM, solving global remittance and inclusion for billions of unbanked people. HBAR, securing enterprise-level transactions for the next generation of digital economies. They're not theories. They're the foundation of the next system. Every wealth transition in history has followed the same story. Most people laugh at it. Then they ignore it. Then suddenly they regret it. That's what happened with the internet, Bitcoin, and AI. And now we're watching the same movie play out again, this time with the tokenization of value itself. When you accumulate XLM, XRP, and HBAR, you're not just collecting assets, you're laying digital foundations. You're building something your future family could one day leverage, not just for money, but for participation in a new financial system. Maybe they'll stake it, build with it, or use it in tokenized economies that don't even exist yet. The point is, it becomes a bridge between your lifetime and theirs. That's the kind of wealth that never fades, because it's rooted in infrastructure, not illusion. Let's be honest, being early isn't easy. It's lonely. You'll question yourself. People will say you're crazy for holding when it feels like nothing's moving. But every generation has that moment, the period where conviction is tested before clarity arrives. That's where the real builders of wealth separate themselves from the rest. You see, the charts don't tell the full story. The partnerships do. The integrations do. The shift in global policy does. So while others panic over daily price swings, smart investors are watching the slow burn of institutional adoption. That's the difference between chasing hype and owning the future. There's always a moment, right before the world wakes up, when the signs are obvious to those paying attention. You can feel it right now in the tone of global meetings, in how major banks are no longer dismissing blockchain, in how ISO 20022 standards are being adopted quietly by financial systems around the world. All these changes point to one truth. The infrastructure of value exchange is being rebuilt, and the early ownership of that infrastructure is what creates multi-generational opportunity. So while retail traders argue over short-term moves, institutions are quietly buying access. That's why it's not about luck. It's about preparation. And if you're holding XLM, XRP, or HBAR, that preparation is already happening in real time, whether you see it or not. Let's simplify it. Patience makes you money. Research keeps your conviction strong. Conviction carries you through the noise. That's how every generational wealth story starts. Quietly, patiently, with someone who saw something the world wasn't ready to see. Your decision to stay consistent, to hold, to learn, and to think long-term is what separates you from the rest. Because one day, when these digital systems are powering everything, from your salary to your savings, you'll know that you didn't just watch it happen. You were part of it. You were early. You chose conviction over convenience. And that's how generational wealth is actually built. One patient, intentional decision at a time. If this resonated with you, if you're one of the few building legacy, not hype, then hit that like button so this message reaches more people who need to hear it. Drop a comment below and tell me, which one are you most bullish on, XLM, XRP, or HBAR? And don't forget to subscribe, because in the next video, we're going to break down how institutional money is already positioning for this new era of tokenized finance, and why retail investors barely even know it's happening. The future is being built, and you're already standing at the front of it.